It's January 29th, 2014, and this is the Arizona Mining Review. I'm Lee Allison, your host with the Arizona Geological Survey here in Tucson, Arizona. And as usual, we're going to start today's episode with Nyal Niemuth, the head of our Economic Geology section based in Phoenix. Nyal, Happy New Year. And we finished up our show last year at the end of 2013 doing a summary of what happened, but now that we've had a little more time to digest it all, what were the big events in 2013 and what was surprising?
Maybe we can start by just seeing where we ended up the year. I was looking at some of the metal price averages for the 2013 period, comparing those to 2012. And in our last session, we were gloomily discussing the general decline that we saw across the board on the metal commodities that are important to Arizona. But the good news for us in hindsight is that copper ended up at $3.38, which was a relatively small decline of about 7.5%. If we compare that to, say, molybdenum, we saw the price drop there nearly 20%. Silver was down 15.5%. I'm sorry, silver was down 23%. And even though we commented on the large dollar drop in gold during the year, year-over-year averages, we only saw gold off about 15.5%.
So even as wild as the market was by the end of the year, overall, while it was down, it may not have been down as much as many people kind of not anticipated, perceived.
Correct. And like I say, being that we're really a pretty insignificant gold and silver producing state, it's nice to see that our most important commodity, copper, was, even though it was down a relatively small percentage.
So what that suggests is when we compare ourselves, say, to Nevada, which has been the number one mining state for the last couple of years, where we compete with them, we probably saw a bigger drop in Nevada production than we did in Arizona production, gold versus copper. So in terms of the total value of mining.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see where we end up if we're number one or number two in terms of the leading mineral producing state in the country.
Right, so the U.S. Geological Survey will be compiling these numbers here. We ought to expect to see those coming out here by early springtime and see what the actual impacts were for the state.
Yep. So that'll be interesting to see. The other thing that I put together in the last few weeks is I queried the Bureau of Land Management's LR2000 site. And although a lot of people know how to use it to look up where there are current claims or not claims, so they can go out and do some staking, I used some of the advanced features and did some statistical tabulations. And so what I did is I came up with the total number of mining claims, and it reported that at the end, early January, but basically the end of 2013, we had seen an increase of about 750 mining claims in the state, giving us a total of just less by 9 of 50,000 mining claims. Where we saw the changes, where we saw a large increase in the number of mill sites, about 750 new mill sites or additional mill sites. And then we had a small addition in load claims, but we saw, as probably was expected with the increased fees, especially hitting the association placer claims, a small drop in placer claims.
That the number of increased mill sites seems significant. Can you put that in context of what we've seen in recent years?
I can't. This is something that I've only recently started doing, is the breakdown of the subtypes of mining claims that are on file. The BLM probably could pull those statistics out, and actually I probably could if I delved further into the sub ranges in that query and break those, but I don't have those figures readily available.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I thought you might have had those sitting back there.
No, but your point is good, and has me wondering too, is what explains the large increase in mill sites? And I wonder if perhaps we haven't seen a lot of claims, mill site claims, stake for things like Resolution Copper or some of the other projects that we're seeing move forward. They're anticipating, hey, we've got our deposit laid out here. We know where that's at. We're not likely to do a lot more exploration, but we need to establish those mill sites so we have places to put facilities like dumps, tailings, and so forth.
Right. That's an interesting point, that some of these big projects now are maturing and moving along the timeline where it may be time to start identifying those areas. That's intriguing. We'll have to follow up on that, see what we can pull out of the facts and figures.
I get some spare moments, I'll do a little bit of other research too.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, what do you see that's coming up in 2014 that looks interesting?
Well, we close with an optimistic note in our December broadcast that maybe we'll see Congress do something interesting and work together. And we've already seen that trend continue early this year with some of the budget bills being passed. And so, staying on that positive note, I took some time over the holidays and flipped through the extensive proposed mining plan of operations, the general mining plan of operations for Resolution Copper. And the reason I say it took some time, I did a little bit of statistics. There are 3 volumes that total 307 pages, and I was really surprised to see that the appendices for volumes 1 and 2 total 443 maps and plates. So there's a lot of interesting information that they've released.
Right, and just for our viewers who may not be that familiar, Resolution's mine is a proposed underground mine outside the town of Superior, below the old magma mine, and we're working on a shaft going down to 7,000 or 7,500 feet to go after what could be one of the biggest copper deposits in the country. But they need a land exchange approved by the federal government in order to make this project viable to move forward.
Exactly, that's what I was going to get to, is we need to see that Congress work together to see if we can get that land exchange passed so they can actually proceed on the development. But one of the criticisms that a number of folks have made is they'd like to know more about what their plans were. And so late in the year, they released first to the Forest Service, but now it's available to everyone at the Resolution Copper website, the proposed plans I was discussing. And so I was kind of eager to read through that. We've all had, issues of like, where might they put the tailings? Especially once we saw that BHP sold off Pinto Valley, which should be considered to be a possible tailing site, as well as that mill had been considered perhaps in 10 years from now as being a starter mill or the ultimate mill for Resolution. And so this plan has started to see what their thoughts are, where they would put the various facilities. They've identified 4 key areas where the shafts and the panel caving will be. That's known as the East Plant site. The West Plant site is the old processing area, the smelter and concentrator from the old magma mine. And that's again going to be designated as the concentration site. They've selected an area, proposed an area that would be northwest of Superior, north of 60, about 4,000 acres for the tailings pond. And then they've, kind of surprising to me, they've picked a site many miles away, almost all the way to Magma, which is southwest of Superior, along their railroad site, to have they're going to slurry the concentrates to that site and filter them there and then do rail car ship out.
And that's a surprise. I don't think either you or I had been thinking that that's what their plans were. I know I was surprised when I saw that map. What do you think that means?
I don't know, but part of what facilitates this is they've got that corridor with the railroad. Even though they need to do a little permitting, it provides a lot of opportunity to distribute where they send water, where they get water, where they reclaim water. So it's something they could take advantage of. One of the other things we see in all their drawings is we get to see where the proposed conveyor will be underground from the mine. I was kind of surprised that it appears to make a hard 90-degree bend from going west to go north up to the plant site. And then similarly, we get to see where the proposed tailings pipeline will be to get over to that proposed tailings storage facility. But anyway, so if anyone's curiously, seriously interested, curious, they should go take a look at those extensive downloads.
Okay, and we'll make sure that we put the URL up on the screen here for those viewers who want to go take a look at that and look at some of those 400 plates and maps and get a better understanding of this project.
People haven't seen it already. You were good enough, I think, nearly a month ago to put it up on your blog, so they can also go find that URL there.
Right, the arizonageology.blogspot.com. So take a look there as well, because we've got a link at it. Niall, there's been some other recent developments here. I don't know if you want to comment on the Rosemont mine and what's been happening there in the public arena.
We're in that, again, if we look back to December, we noted that the Coronado Forest Service had issued a draft record of decision supporting development of the Rosemont mine. We're in the month period where we're going to have the people who have participated in the process be able to file objections if they have concerns that weren't met. In that note, it was interesting to see the editorial in the Daily Star a couple of weeks ago.
Right, well, in fact, it was just this last, it was January 19th, Sunday the 19th. And I have a copy of that editorial page here in front of me. Here, let me I'll hold this up. But it was pretty much the entire editorial page was dedicated to the issue about Rosemont and time to move ahead, let Rosemont be built. And it was interesting, it's a 3-column, about 3/4 of the page going down. There was also a companion editorial next to it entitled, "With or Without Mine, Water is Key Concern." And so it looks like there was some divided opinion on the editorial board in the newspaper here in Tucson, but overall they said, no, it's time to go forward, but they've raised concerns about water and seem to imply, although some of their language here, it dances around it, but seem to imply that mining is one of the major users of our groundwater, which is not really the case. So they raise a valid concern about water in Arizona, but I think it's unfortunate that they tie it mainly to mining, whereas both agriculture and urban use of water are really the biggest drivers, and mining is a very small user of our water. But overall, it was, I think it was a fairly dramatic statement for the paper to make about saying it's time to let the Rosemont copper mine be built.
Yeah, they did a nice job summarizing some of the improvements that have been made during the NEPA process. They also did a nice job saying that even though they had some concerns and would prefer it not to be in their backyard, that the state especially will benefit from the number of high-paying local jobs in the private sector.
It was interesting, if you haven't seen that Sunday paper here from the 19th, there was a full-page advertisement from the business community in Tucson saying it's time to move forward, we're behind this, we're ready for the jobs and the benefits. The paper ran then a 2-page color spread on the inside listing all of the environmental issues that they say still need to be resolved, but in the end they came out with the editorial. So it was a very significant major contribution, or not contribution, dedication of the paper talking about the Rosemont issue. But I think overall most everyone feels like, yeah, there's some issues to resolve here, but it's moving forward. It's been a long process. There's still some hurdles ahead, but certainly the impression is that most of the issues have been resolved, or there's a process to get them resolved, and it's time to let the mining begin.
Yeah, significantly they addressed that. They still need to acquire their Army Corps of Engineer permit. But I think what's still going to be the most interesting to me is to see how this new NEPA process wraps up and where we are in 3 months from now.
Right, that's probably the biggest unknown. This is a change from things in the past, and this is one of the first permitting efforts to go through that. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But I think overall that the sense is cautiously optimistic from the development side that we're going to see some activity earlier this year rather than later in moving the mine ahead. Well, Niall, we've run a lot longer this morning than I thought we would, but a lot of really good stuff. As usual, it's always great to hear from you and get your insights and perspective, and we'll look forward to talking to you next month.
I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting news this year.
There always is. Thanks. All right. Well, we're here at the Lodge on the Desert in Tucson, Arizona, with 2 members of the board of directors of OneGeology, and who've just completed the board meeting here. And I'm pleased to have Chris Pigram, CEO of Geoscience Australia, and Marko Komac, who's the managing director of OneGeology. So thanks for taking some time. I know you guys have to catch planes and be heading back home, but tell us, what is OneGeology? Explain to the people here in Arizona who may not be familiar with that.
Well, OneGeology, just before I introduce it, I have to point out that made significant shift from being a non-legal entity into an organized international initiative of primarily of geological surveys, which we now extended to every institution that can contribute to the concept of OneGeology. And also we made a significant shift from only serving digital geological maps to serving every possible geoscientific data that is available within our archives or within the archives of potential contributors.
That's a significant advance. Now, how many members are there in OneGeology worldwide?
Well, we can look at it from two perspectives. We have official consortium members which contribute financially to OneGeology. We have 17 of those. But then we have additional, around 50 additional contributors who contribute the data. So all in all, we can say it's quite a variety, a huge community of institutions that participate in OneGeology.
Right, so those are the organizations worldwide that are actually serving their digital geologic maps online through the OneGeology portal. Yes. And then there's another group that are getting up to speed, learning how to do this, developing the capabilities. So we have something like 117 countries represented in the OneGeology consortium.
That is true. One of very important parts of OneGeology is transfer know-how. So we know that there are around 200 countries in the world. Now in OneGeology we have 117 countries participating, but not of course actively and not completely serving their data. So the goal is to engage those countries to the level where they could also serve the best possible data they have and within the best possible technology, which OneGeology does provide.
So the meeting here in Tucson was significant because OneGeology, which has been serving geologic maps now for 7 years, something like that,
yes,
has made a big jump. And you started to talk about that a minute ago. What is the change now? Can you describe that in a little more detail?
Well, the significant change is a part of starting to be organized in a legal way, but to go back to the data, is that we've made quite a significant shift from the point of geologists serving only the digital geological maps that we have in archives towards serving all kind of geoscientific data that we could provide to the end users. And that is really a dramatic shift towards the end user requirements.
Okay. Chris, you're chairman of the board for OneGeology, but as CEO of Geoscience Australia, you really come from a country and a viewpoint very focused on mining mineral resources. So I wonder if you could maybe share what your perspective is on OneGeology's role historically has been to serve geologic maps, and now we're moving into geoscience data worldwide. What are the implications for mining and exploration and development worldwide?
Well, Lee, thank you, and you'd appreciate that one of the great challenges for all of the resource sectors who are our key stakeholders in many of this, in relation to many geological matters, one of the great challenges they have is to find data for their decision-making processes and to be able to form a view as to where they might wish to pursue opportunities. So one of the great challenges we have in Australia is actually to get the information to people that facilitates that decision-making. And we see OneGeology as a component of a global program to ensure that all geological surveys and all providers of geoscience information in all its forms do it in a way that's compatible and consistent to minimise the overheads for the companies in collecting the information and being able to access information that they need, both accurate information and quickly through the internet, online and readily available for them to do it. And as we've been discussing, one of the big changes at this meeting is to actually go to full digital data, 3D, best quality that people have available, so we can look at all aspects of geology. But not just for the resources sector, it's a key underpinning capability for hazards and a range of other applications. So we see OneGeology, I see OneGeology as the CEO of Geoscience Australia, is one of those fundamental enabling capabilities that will give the whole of the community access to the information that we gather into the future.
Right, fantastic. So where are we going in the next year with this organization and this vision? Do you want to, either one of you, Sue, kind of give us your thoughts of what we may see?
I'll make some comments and then my colleague Marko can add to them, excuse me. The big challenge I think we've discussed here at this meeting is how do we sustain OneGeology? So our major challenge is to actually get as much engagement as we can from our state survey, our geological survey colleagues, and there's a program whereby we will continue to pursue memberships and people come into play. But in addition to that, we've set ourselves the task of attempting to raise through various mechanisms the funds that will allow us to sustain this capability into the future. And any of the companies who are interested in knowing more, we'd certainly be happy to hear from them, and we would very much welcome their input in both as a potential user and perhaps as future potential partners in OneGeology.
It's great. And one of the things we'll do is on this episode, we'll put the URL so it'll be on the screen for anybody. And,
excellent.
And
Yes.
Anyone who views this can also contact me, because I think most people don't know, but I've just joined the board as the North American representative in the Arizona Geological Survey, is a paid member in the consortium and representing all 50 state geological surveys in the U.S. So we're hoping to reach out in the U.S. to a much broader constituency. So I'm hoping we can serve as a conduit to bring U.S. Industry and academia and government agencies and others into the mix. Marko, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, just to go to the more technical issues, one of the biggest the biggest challenge in the next year would be to get our members, our contributors, to comply with OGC standards, Open Geodata standards, which will enable the end user easily to draw from different parts of the world, different different servers from our users, the data that they can then comply easily together without being scientists or about being knowledgeable of the georeferenced or digital geological geoscience data. So that's very important, again, to approach the end user. So that is the first goal. Of course, we have long-term goals, but these are goals that we need to tackle first.
Right, and I think the vision that we're seeing here in the U.S. is if the world, with 117 countries, have agreed to use some common standards and work together to share geoscience data in these ways, it really becomes a tipping point where everyone starts using it and everyone agrees that the value of this and starts jumping aboard and adopting common standards. So I think the global reach and the impact of OneGeology may reach well beyond the geosciences and help promulgate common standards among all the sciences that have geospatial data, georeference data, and allowing us to bring the data together worldwide.
Indeed.
Very exciting.
It will become the default best practice model, we hope.
Right. Well, fantastic.
That's true. In fact, that already happened to a certain extent within GEO, that is Global Earth Observation System, where OneGeology is mentioned constantly as being one of the very best practices in this field.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you. I think it was a successful meeting, a very significant meeting that happened here, and the word now is going to go out worldwide about what's happened here and how everyone can participate. So thank you for joining us on Arizona Mining Review, and good luck in coming endeavors.
Thank you, Lee. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in today. Our producer-director is Mike Conway, broadcast engineer Jordan Maddy, behind the camera today Jenna Favel, and as usual our set and logo design and graphics done by Stephanie Mar and Arnie Bermudez. We look forward to seeing you again next month on Arizona Mining Review.